With you again, Manfred. I look forward today to hearing your new topic that you want to discuss, which is value chains in education. Can you first provide a brief background of yourself?
Hi, Dustin. It's my pleasure to be with you again. Thank you very much for this talk. My background is as a researcher in intellectual capital now for almost 18 years. I started with some ideas on measurement of intellectual capital, and I did some projects in the German industry and in the German-speaking countries. We focus on small and medium-sized enterprises in industry. And worked on some projects that focus on applying the concept of intellectual capital to networks and clusters as well in the automotive industry. And so recently I turned to education, and based on some project of some students of mine, I happened to learn about that industry quite a lot, and was lucky enough to do some background research. And I'm working as a consultant and working as a teacher and part-time lecturer, so I try to bridge that domains of knowledge.
Thanks. Can you first discuss what is intellectual capital?
The concept of intellectual capital, I think, was introduced in the mid-90s and focused on the intangible part of our economy. So we have lots of tangible assets, like, for example, factories and infrastructure in our businesses. But there is another side as well. This is the intangible part, or we call it the intellectual part. Of course, there are humans. There's human capital. We need people to work. We need structures, processes, for example, or organizational structures that remain in an organization when people leave the organization. And there's a third dimension, which is relational capital. This is the outside perspective. For example, if I'm providing a service, I need a customer and I need to transfer that service, and the customer needs to understand what I do, and I need to understand him, and together we are creating some value. And the idea of intellectual capital was implemented in production processes. We can infuse knowledge, we can infuse intellectual capital in our value creating processes and add substantial higher value. See, there is an interesting difference to, for example, steel. If you pure steel and add it, for example, to a car, then you can use it only once. But if you use intellectual capital, you can use it twice or three times, many times. And the more frequent you use it, the more valuable it becomes because others can relate to it.
Thanks. My next question is regarding governance. Can you talk about governance or integrated management within educational institutions in Austria?
Yes, as I'm living in an automotive city in Graz, in Austria, the concept of value chains and supply chains is omnipresent. You can see it everywhere. So the idea of integrating resources along a value chain is quite established in the city and in industry. So I was thinking about applying that concept to education as well. And what I figured was a bold comparison of setting a student similar to a car in automotive industry. A car is, of course, produced by many different suppliers and then assembled in a large factory, and it's trimmed to customer demand and customer specifications. If we apply the same idea to education processes, the student should be ready for the challenges of the knowledge economy and future employers, right? And what my thinking goes then that we could probably optimize the education processes to create the best students available, or the best future workers for industry in the future. And I try to test that idea. I'm aware that this is probably a concept that could be misunderstood, but the integration idea is just such a good one because it saved time and resources. So I think that might be applicable to governance processes as well. And the idea is quite simple. If we could integrate different levels of education, starting from kindergarten and preschool to high school and probably later on university levels, we could maybe reap some of the cost savings and efficiency gains we have seen in automotive industry as well. So this essentially is the idea of applying an integration concept of a value chain or a supply chain concept to education as well. And I tested that and asked teachers and directors in 16 different institutions in Austria about their idea on that. We asked about their ideas on intellectual capital and particularly focused on the relational part. The relational capital part of intellectual capital covers, for example, drivers like collaboration with other institutions. In that case, collaborating schools or probably competing schools in the same district. And on the next level, for example, from kindergarten, you go to school and then to next levels of schooling. So we ask directors, for example, on their relations to the next level of education. And particularly on the teachers level, we found out that there is almost no contact to the next level of organization or to the level previous to their own. And that was interesting because it's exactly the opposite of an integration idea. They were focusing on the pupils, of course. They were teaching them and investing lots of energy and knowledge to improve skills and knowledge of their pupils and students. But they did not really reflect on improving relations to their surrounding institutions. And that could be interesting. Of course, they do share some infrastructure, like gyms, for example, or labs. So there is some contact. But regarding the level of knowledge, of competence of students, integration did not yet happen. So I did a little experiment and asked teachers as well as directors a simple question. I asked them, who is your customer? And expected answers ranging from my student or my pupil is my student, my customer, of course, or the parents of my student is the customer of my training efforts, or and third alternative could be I'm training these students to be future knowledge workers for industry or whatever research, whatever they want to do. So you see, there is a long and wide range of who the customer of a training process of schooling could be. And in that case, the relational capital part in the value chain of education was not yet defined. And I think that's a huge potential to integrate the training and teaching processes along the value chain. If we are aware that our pupils should be citizens and the future workforce, I think some of the training processes could be focused a little bit more. So the general idea is to integrate education processes over time and support students in their development early on and help them avoid some frustrations, as well as develop some of their special talents and gifts much more focused than they do it right now. In Europe, we have a political program. It's called the PISA comparison project that compares teaching performance all over Europe. And the general problem is that not all of our students are achieving their potential. So we have to adapt our infrastructure. We have to adapt our institutions and think about new concepts of education, essentially.
And can you talk about what the focus should be on for the future?
Well, I think the environment of education changed a lot. We have not only complete new developments in technology, like the digital divide, we have completely new technologies in sharing and doing online training, but we have new forms of interactions as well. So I think the decentral approach of schools focusing on their students is absolutely essential. But I think we could open it up a little bit. So far, schools are closed entities, I think. They're working in their curriculum. They start in autumn, most of them, and finish 4 years later, probably. And then they see the students off to the next level. I think we could maybe learn from industrial concepts like this value chain and focus on the customer idea. I think we could probably learn on the customer needs and apply this new integration ideas on the training process as well. So yeah, probably that is demanding, particularly because in some countries there are different stakeholders paying for the educational process. Sometimes it's the province, sometimes it's the state. Then there are, of course, some private institutions as well. But maybe we can benefit from the idea, from the market idea we learned from industry, where some OEMs, some car manufacturers focus on their product and streamline the whole value chain in front of them. Probably we could benefit and integrate, for example, universities in the high school and college level to attract more students to higher education and give them the right education we need for the knowledge economy.
Well, thanks, Manfred, for sharing your views today on this topic of intellectual value chains in education.
Well, my pleasure. I was happy to publish some of these ideas in an article. I'm going to send you the URL to the journal. And yeah, it's great to get some feedback probably, and happy to have another chat with you.
Thank you.